The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and lethal. It arrived not by post, but by the hand of my brother's personal assistant, a young man who couldn't meet my eyes as he slid it across the reception desk of the small art gallery I managed. "Mr. Thorne's instructions," he mumbled, before retreating into the rain-slicked London afternoon. My fingers, smudged with the charcoal from this morning's live drawing session, trembled as I broke the wax seal of pretentious crimson tea I knew so well. The letter was not a request. It was a decree. The language was cold, legal, and utterly final. "The lease for the property at 17B Galbraith Mews is hereby terminated, effective 30 days from this date. The property is required for redevelopment as part of the Thorne Consolidated Growth Strategy. Vacate premises by the 1st of the month." It was signed with a flourish I could picture him practicing. "Sincerely, Alistair Thorne, CEO." Sincerely. The word was a slap. My own brother, the same boy who had shared a treehouse with me, who had smuggled toast to my room when I was sent to bed without supper, was now evicting me from the only place that had felt like a home since our parents passed. The gallery, the Gilded Page, was more than a job. It was my sanctuary, a tiny, defiantly beautiful space dedicated to overlooked artists and dreamers, the quiet ones, the ones like me. It was the one piece of my life Alistair hadn't been able to control, the one venture he had dismissed with a condescending chuckle as my little hobby. I stood there, the paper crinkling in my tightening grip, the scent of oil paint and old wood, my scent suddenly feeling thin and threatened. I could hear his voice in my head, the one he used in boardrooms, smooth as polished granite. "Kellen, be reasonable. It's just business. This is a prime location. It's wasted on this." He had never understood why I didn't want a corner office in his empire, why I preferred the company of canvases to conglomerates. To him, my life was a messy, unprofitable disappointment. 30 days later, he came himself. The black Rolls-Royce purred to a stop outside the gallery, an obscene predator amidst the cobblestones and climbing ivy. Alistair emerged, immaculate in a tailored overcoat, his hair perfectly silvered at the temples, a walking monument to his own success. I was carrying the last box, my personal sketchbooks, and a small jade plant to my battered second-hand car. "Kellen," he said, his voice echoing in the empty space. The walls were bare, the shelves empty. The soul of the place was gone, packed away in cardboard tombs. "I see you're being sensible." I didn't answer. I just watched him, this stranger who shared my blood. He looked around, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "It's for the best, you know. This place was always beneath you. Time to stop playing shopkeeper and come into the real world." He took a step closer, his eyes devoid of any warmth, any memory of our shared past. "Pack your things," he ordered, the phrase crisp, absolute. He gestured vaguely at the box in my arms. "All of it. The new project starts on Monday. We're unveiling it, the finality of it." The sheer, unfeeling erasure should have shattered me. But as his words hung in the dusty air, something cold and hard solidified in my chest. He looked at me with pity, believing he held all the power, that I was just his wayward, defeated little sister, being cleaned up after. He didn't know. He had been so busy building his empire, he never bothered to look at the foundation. And the foundation, it turned out, had my name on it. The weeks that followed were a study in hollow quiet. I moved into a small, temporary flat, the boxes from the gallery stacked in the corner like unmarked graves. The grief was a physical weight, a leaden cloak I wore every day. I missed the soft creak of the floorboards, the way the afternoon light bled through the high windows, illuminating dancing motes of dust. I missed the artists who would pop in for tea, their hands stained with paint, their eyes full of dreams. Alistair had not just taken my workplace. He had dissolved my community. I avoided the news, but his face was everywhere. Thorn Consolidated breaks ground on new luxury development. There he was, Alistair in a hard hat, grinning as he posed with a golden shovel in front of my gallery. The article gushed about his vision, his transformative impact on the city's landscape. There was no mention of the evicted gallery, of the displaced artists, of me. I was collateral damage, a footnote in the grand narrative of Alistair Thorne. The numbness was a mercy at first, but slowly it began to thaw, replaced by a cold, clear-eyed clarity. I spent days in the quiet of the flat, not mourning, but remembering. Remembering the details our parents had shared in hushed tones over brandy, long after they thought we were asleep. Our father, a quiet, brilliant man who preferred architectural blueprints to balance sheets. Our mother, a sharp, intuitive woman with a head for strategy. They had seen the ruthlessness in Alistair even then. The way he'd cheat at board games, the way he'd take credit for my drawings. They had loved him, but they had feared for him. And they had feared for me. One memory, long buried, surfaced with the sharpness of a shard of glass. A conversation I'd overheard at 14. My mother's worried voice. "He'll steamroll her, John. He'll take everything." My father's calm reply. "Not everything. The core assets are protected. The Galbraith Muse Trust, the Mayfair property, they're in her name. He gets the company. She gets the foundation. It's the only way to keep her safe." At the time, it had meant nothing. A trust. A property, abstract concepts to a teenage girl. I had been so consumed by my art, so determined to carve a path away from the family business, that I had never once looked at the paperwork, the thick folders our parents' solicitor had given us after the funeral. I had signed where he told me to sign, my mind a world away, trusting that Alistair, the big brother, would handle it. Now, the truth dawned with the slow, terrible force of a sunrise. I scrambled through my files, my heart hammering against my ribs. I found the old leather-bound portfolio. Inside, tucked between my birth certificate and my parents' will, was a deed. The paper was thick, the typing old-fashioned. It listed the owner of the property at 17B Galbraith Muse. It wasn't Thorn Consolidated. It wasn't a holding company. It was my name, Kellen Thorne. He hadn't evicted me from a leased property. He had evicted me from my own building. He had been collecting rent from me for years for the privilege of living in a space I legally owned. The audacity was breathtaking. The betrayal was so complete, so venomous. It left me breathless. He hadn't just dismissed my dreams. He had built his own upon my stolen inheritance. The coldness in my chest ignited into a quiet blue flame. This was no longer about a lost gallery. This was about justice. I hired a lawyer, not one of the sleek corporate firms Alistair used, but a relentless, sharp-eyed woman named Miss Sterling who specialized in untangling familial financial webs. Her office was all exposed brick and steel, a stark contrast to the plush carpets of my brother's world. When I showed her the deed, a slow, grim smile spread across her face. "Well, now," she said, her voice like grinding stones, "this is going to be interesting." The plan we devised was not one of loud confrontation. That was Alistair's way. My way would be quieter, more elegant, more absolute. We would not sue him. We would not send a threatening letter. We would let him complete his project. Let him invest millions of his company's capital, his reputation, his entire ego into transforming my property. Let him build his monument to his own greed, brick by expensive brick. Miss Sterling began a deep forensic audit. She discovered that Alistair had, through a complex and likely fraudulent series of shell companies and forged documents, been funneling the rent from my property and several others I owned that I'd never known about directly into Thorn Consolidated. He had been using my inheritance to fund his expansion, to shore up his losses, to buy his tailored overcoats and his silver-topped cufflinks. He had been propping up his empire on a foundation of theft. Meanwhile, I watched, from a cafe across the street, I sipped tea and sketched as the gallery was gutted. I watched the old bones of the building be stripped away and replaced with steel and glass. A sleek, monstrous structure began to climb skyward, a temple to modern minimalism that screamed Alistair's name. It was grotesque, and it was beautiful, because with every floor that was added, with every million he poured into it, the trap was being sprung tighter. He was building his own cage. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, chilling sense of purpose. This was no longer about getting my gallery back. That was gone. This was about reclaiming what was mine. This was about revealing the rot at the heart of his perfect world. I started wearing my mother's old pearl necklace, a simple, elegant strand that felt like a suit of armor. I let my hair grow long, my posture straighten. The grieving sister was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her own worth, who was about to present the bill. The day the building was completed was a media event. Thorn Tower opens. The banners screamed. There were speeches, ribbon cuttings, champagne. Alistair was at the center of it all, beaming, the visionary patriarch. I saw it all on the financial news live stream. He looked invincible. He had no idea he was standing on the precipice, about to be pushed by the very person he'd thought he had buried. The annual Thorn Consolidated shareholders meeting was held in the soaring, marble-lined atrium of the newly completed Thorn Tower. It was a spectacle of corporate power. Alistair sat on the dais, a king holding court, flanked by his board of directors. I slipped in through a side door unnoticed. I was dressed simply, a dark, well-cut suit, my mother's pearls at my throat. I took a seat in the back, my posture calm, my hands folded in my lap. For an hour, I listened to him. He spoke of growth, of market dominance, of visionary leadership. He presented charts showing Thorn Tower as the crown jewel of his portfolio, a testament to his bold, forward-thinking strategy. The shareholders applauded, their faces rapt. He was at the peak of his power. Then, it was time for questions from the floor. I stood up. The room was large, and I was a small figure in the back. A junior executive with a microphone hurried over, assuming I was a minor investor. He held the mic out to me. Alistair from the stage squinted slightly, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features as the interruption. Then, recognition dawned. His eyes widened, just a fraction. He forced a patronizing smile. "Kellen, surprised to see you here. I hope you're not here to ask about reinstating your little art gallery. This is a meeting for serious business." A faint titter ran through the crowd. I let the silence hang for a moment, letting his condescension echo in the vast space. I did not raise my voice. It was calm, clear, and cut through the air like a scalpel. "My question, Mr. Thorn, concerns the core assets of this company." I paused, looking directly at him. "Specifically, the property we are currently standing in, Thorn Tower." His smile tightened. "This building is a symbol of everything we've achieved. A freehold asset owned outright by Thorn Consolidated, is it?" I asked, my tone one of mild curiosity. I nodded to Miss Sterling, who was standing by the AV technician. A moment later, the massive screen behind Alistair flickered to life. It did not show his financial charts. It showed a scanned image of a deed. My deed. The one for the land at 17B Galbraith Mews. My name was highlighted in brilliant yellow. The room fell utterly silent. "This document," I continued, my voice still quiet but now filling every corner of the atrium, "establishes that I am the legal and sole owner of the land upon which this building stands. Furthermore," another click. A spreadsheet appeared, tracing a complex web of financial transactions. "It appears that for the last decade you have been illegally collecting rent from me and from several other properties I own, funneling those funds directly into Thorn Consolidated to cover operating losses and fund ventures such as this one. The silence was now deafening, a physical pressure in the room. Alistair had gone pale. These are forged. This is a pathetic attempt at. The originals are with the land registry. Miss Sterling's voice rang out, crisp and authoritative. And the financial audit has been verified by 3 independent firms. The evidence is irrefutable, Mr. Thorne. You are not the owner of this tower. You are a tenant. A tenant who has been engaged in systematic, large-scale fraud against your own sister and by extension, the shareholders of this company. Chaos erupted. Flashbulbs popped. Shareholders shot to their feet, shouting. Alistair stood frozen at the podium, his mouth opening and closing, his kingdom crumbling around him in the space of 60 seconds. He looked at me, and for the first time in our lives, I saw not condescension or pity, but raw, undiluted fear. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply held his gaze, a silent architect surveying the collapse of a flawed design. I had not needed to scream or fight. I had only needed to present the truth. He had laughed at my tiny shop, but it was my name, quietly waiting in a file all these years, that had finally toppled his empire. He had ordered me to pack my things, never realizing he was the one who would be leaving. If this story made your heart race or your eyes tear up with just to support this video and keep the fire of silent revenge alive. The final settlement was swift. Thorne Consolidated was crippled by the scandal and the financial liability. I took possession of Thorne Tower, my tower. The first thing I did was have the gaudy, illuminated sign taken down. In its place, on the simple, elegant granite font, 2 words were etched, forever marking the truth of whose foundation it was built upon, the Kellen. My brother's name was erased from the building, just as he had tried to erase me. But my name, the one he had always dismissed, was now carved in stone, a permanent, silent testament to the fact that the quietest sister can hold the deadliest deed. Common justice wins if you believe no wound should stay unanswered. Justice wins, justice wins.